In the 1920s, American history describes this decade as roaring and economies across the country were booming. It was no different in the hills of eastern Kentucky, where coal was king, drawing many men, black and white, to come bow down at the coal temples in the mountain valleys, pledging their lives as a sacrifice. It was during these times that Fred Kid Shannon came to Wayland, Kentucky around 1922 while in his late 20s. He came not as a miner, but as a one-handed singing troubadour, filling the evening hours with love songs, ballads, and religious songs, going from porch to porch, soothing the souls of miners and their families. How quickly the tide can turn. The color of Shannon's skin made him an easy target for arrows accusing him for murder of a white man, supposedly over a $5 debt. Another story said that the white man was killed during a card game, with Shannon being the only person of color in the room, fingers pointed at him as a murderer. On that night of October 24, 1924, Shannon was escorted to the jailhouse, but he didn't live to give his account at a trial. That night, a mob came and drug Shannon from jail and shot him. He died en route to the hospital. It's unknown where his body lays in rest. Every gravesite holds more than just headstones with names and dates, but holds buried stories, told and untold. As part of a community service project, the East Kentucky Community Remembrance Project adopted a black cemetery in 2021 that had lain in neglect for many years. Weeds strangling headstones. Some headstones lying face down in the dirt. Other headstones stood upright but were faceless, with names and dates worn away by decades of weather and wear. But the determined group brought it back to life. What is known as Spencer Martin Cemetery, located upon a hill on Steels Creek in Wayland. At least 30 graves can be identified with burial dates ranging from 1910 to 1961, all with history waiting to be uncovered and stories told.
As I was walking down the lonesome road, the Spirit spoke unto me, and it filled my heart with joy. One day as I was walking down the lonesome road, singing, I thank the Lord I'm in His care, in His care.
Thought of, hillbilly, white hillbilly town, and it's not really that way. I'm sure some places are just basically white, but then there's the black people of color, and I think when you're counting it in, we have to be counted in as part of the culture.
Got His arms all around me, no evil thoughts can harm me, for I thank the Lord I'm in His care, in His care. Well, I would not be a sinner.
I think we all knew that, especially in the early days of coal mining, that there were a large number of blacks who lived in our local communities, and that very little was known about their history anymore, or at least we didn't know anything about that history. And we certainly didn't know anything about the lynching in eastern Kentucky of Kid Shannon in 1924. So I think that conversation sparked our thinking about, and really the naming of the project as a community remembrance project.
And I think a lot of what resonates with me about the story is not what led up to him being in that jail. It's that that a community took part in the killing of a man. And I think that what's important about like reckoning with that is being a community and acknowledging that it was a multi-part event that took part in like not acknowledging this man's humanity. And I think it will always hit me that, you know, he was just 28 years old and he had interests and a life, and, you know, I wouldn't know about it if it weren't for the Equal Justice Initiative that John and Jean went to. Like, I wouldn't know his name. I wouldn't know that he was a musician, or that people in the community valued his music. I wouldn't know him as a disabled man. Yeah. I think there's a lot of his story that we do know, and there's so much that we don't. Because who wrote the story wasn't his loved ones. And I wish I knew more.
John Rosenberg was telling that he'd been having a conversation with the mayor of Wayland about the history of the lynching that happened there in Wayland, and in the process had learned that there was a black and white cemetery that had fallen into neglect for quite a few years, and he was concerned about it, and that the families, you know, the descendants had all moved off a long while back. And we were coming up on Decoration Day, and so I suggested, well, couldn't we go clean up the cemetery as a service project? And everybody liked that idea, and so we made plans and had our first one in 2021.
When I see the names on the headstones, you know, I think about the lives that they lived, and, you know, question, who is this person? What kind of life did they live? What was their dreams? What was their hopes? What was their inspirations and aspirations? What were their fears? What was their family life like? Because each person has a story to tell, and these people have passed and gone on, and their story's really been left untold.
We can't go back in time and change the fact of lynching and murder and cross burning and all that, but we can say that we work together for a common good. That's a part of our history, and we work together because we love our brother. I worked in the coal mine for 18 years. I felt privileged to do that. I'm a Vietnam veteran. So when we look at some of the sacrifices many people has made, some were lynched, some were shot, some were beaten.
It makes us part of the anti-racism conversation in a much more immediate way. You know, when you other somebody, you don't acknowledge them as being a neighbor. In this, we are hoping in this kinds of activities and conversations that we are getting a chance to be what we really are, which is all together connected.
These kind of events kind of help us remember what took place, and there's a, you know, reconciliation that needs to take place. There's a healing that needs to take place, but bringing these things to light is so important.
To see so many people come out, you know, to help with the cemetery cleanup, people coming out just for the lunch portion of it, and to also know that the place where it happened at, the owner of the old jail He's like, yes, collect soil, put the marker up. That feels good. That lets me know that times have changed, people are changing. People want to keep progressing forward. That's a good feeling, because you don't get that too often, but that's a really great feeling.
So we will be gathering here again, and I hope you'll all be here for the soil collection ceremony. This is part of the community remembrance process that the Equal Justice Center in Montgomery, Alabama sort of coordinates. And you first do the community remembrance through a service project like we've just done, and then you do the soil collection as close as you can get to where you think the person was lynched or died. And you collect a soil sample that goes in a clear jar, and that goes down to, with the name and the county and the date, and that goes down to the Equal Justice Center's museum, and they have a wall of these jars, all different colors of soil. It's impossible to see it and not realize the breadth of the horror that occurred.
For me, it's different. Like I said, I've been there a couple of times, and I have family members of my own that was lynched throughout Kentucky that are there, and it feels good that they're not forgotten about. Same with this project. They're going to be, Kid Shannon's going to be there as well. He's not forgotten about. Nobody's forgetting about him. But with me, it was more of a reckoning with my own history, because I didn't know until I made phone calls home, to speak with my elders back home, my grandmother in particular, that was confirming things for me. I don't want nobody else to have to go through that. It was different. It was very different. But having this there, it's going to benefit so many future generations, black and white. So like a breath of fresh air.
On October 26, 2024, the 100th anniversary of the shooting of Fred Shannon, the community came together to collect soil from the site that the shooting took place. Each person had the opportunity to place that offering of soil into a jar that would become part of the Equal Justice Initiative exhibit in Montgomery, Alabama, where row upon row, shelf after shelf of sacred soil rest in a community of jars, framing the history of lynchings throughout the country. But these are more than just jars filled with dirt. They are jars filled with deferred hopes and dreams of those whose life was snatched away. Jars filled with the dirt still stained with blood crying out for justice.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
This was hard for me to write, so just bear with me. I had to pause. 100 years since Fred Shannon's life was stolen by a mob of white men in a small town in Eastern Kentucky. As I stand here in this place, I can't help but feel the weight of that century. 100 years of silence, of unanswered questions, of untold pain. Man. I am a black man who lives in Eastern Kentucky, and every day I feel the tension between my love for this land and the way this land has treated my people. We have lived here, worked here, built our lives here, and yet we have been terrorized. Fred Shannon's story is just one of thousands, one of nearly 4,400 black men and women lynched in this country between 1877 and 1950. And while their names may be forgotten by many, their stories have never left us. These are wounds that don't heal. These are traumas that get passed down from generation to generation. Fred Shannon was a man accused of murder over a $5 debt. On October 25th, 1924, he was taken to jail right here in Wayland, Kentucky, to await his trial, to be judged by a court of law. But the law never got his chance, because on that night, a mob of white men broke through the walls of that jail. They broke through those walls, not for justice, but for blood. They shot Mr. Shannon where he stood, and he died the next day, October 26, 1924, this day. There were guards that night, there were witnesses, but they saw nothing. They claimed to hear nothing. They said the mob came like ghosts, silent and unseen. I bet they did. But the truth was loud and clear for every black person in Kentucky. This was a lynching. This was racial terror. This was another black life erased, another black family left to grieve, without hope, without answers, without justice. And like so many lynchings in Kentucky, there was no investigation, no arrest, no consequences for the lives of black people. I can't stand here and pretend that I don't feel anger, that I don't feel rage at the injustice of how it all went down. How do you hold that kind of pain and not want to scream at the world for being so indifferent to our suffering? How do you live with the knowledge that this could have been your father, your brother, your son, your uncle, your cousin, and that no one would have cared enough to demand the truth? But in this pain, I also feel gratitude, because today, Fred Shannon is not forgotten. His story is no longer buried in the shame of silence. He is being acknowledged. And this atrocity is being brought to light. It's not enough, but it's a start. It's a sign that maybe, just maybe, we are ready to confront the horrors of our past, to reckon with the racism that has scarred this land far too long. When I think of Fred Shannon, I think of how he could have been any one of us, any black man who dared to live in a world that saw us as less than a human. And I think about the thousands of others who died just like him in small towns across Kentucky, across the South, across this country. Their lives were stolen, their stories silenced, their blood still cries out for justice. As we mark the 100th anniversary of Fred Shannon's lynching, I ask us all to do more than just remember. We must uncover the truth. We must face the brutal reality of our history. And we must demand a reckoning. We owe it to Fred Shannon, to the generations before us, and to the generations that will follow. We cannot heal what we don't confront. So I stand here today, a son of Kentucky, a son of Appalachia, with a heart full of grief, but also full of hope. Grateful that this story is finally being told. Hopeful that Fred Shannon's death will no longer be in vain. And determined to make sure that the full truth of our history is uncovered, no matter how painful it is. The road ahead is long and the work is hard, but we must not give up. We must keep fighting for justice, for recognition, for healing, because our ancestors deserve it. We wouldn't be here without our ancestors. Because Fred Shannon deserves it, and because our future demands it. Thank you.
That soil, that indigenous.
Can I do it by hand?
If you want to.
There we go.
That felt right.
When Dee and I were going up to shovel some in the jars, I had this urge to be like, can we put our hands on it? And like ceremonially, like my culture trains that like you're supposed to like touch the ground to like honor a person. And so it felt very like right to like pat in a little bit, and Dee did it with me, and I know we spoke afterwards that like that felt really right to us and really just really powerful. And I know that was something that he said he carried with him, and like we both were glad that while the scoop was definitely the more efficient tool, it also felt really good to like directly connect to the soil, and directly connect to like everything that land holds. Like land holds all of this like beauty and growth, and also all of the violence that happens on it. And yeah, it's again one of those things that doesn't have like pretty perfect words for it, but it felt right.
I think for that reason, I personally didn't want to touch the soil, just because of everything that was held in that particular soil. I didn't want to carry that energy because it just felt so. It was strong, but also painful, and I didn't want to carry that. That felt to me like touching that soil held sorrow and it held vengeance. See.
Once we started, like I said, I think the first one we put up in 2021, which that was through the Wise County Historical Society, or not Wise County, but Virginia Historical Society. But we got all three of them put up within 2 years, and we got the replacement for the one that was stolen pretty quickly, and that was put on Mountain Empire Community College campus. The replacement was just to so it's behind the fence and there's security guards, because the location where the lynching actually happened is pretty remote.
When you realize that there are actual like lives attached to this, it's not just, oh, we're just doing this thing. Like there are actual lives lost and families connected to it. And reading some of the story, like they're so gruesome. But like this is something that actually happened.
East Kentucky Community Remembrance Project reconvened in 2025 to place the historical marker commemorating the site and the story of the shooting of Frederick Kid Shannon.
Osio, Hatiton Nuisalalapo, Sangale, have greeted you in the languages indigenous to this land. I want to invite you to join me in acknowledging that Wayland is the traditional homeland of the sovereign Shawnee, Cherokee, and Yuchi nations. These territories overlap. We all share our relationship to it. This land is not just the names we call it, it is who cares for it. It's what it carries, what it grows, the rivers and the creeks that bring it life. This land is also the keeper of stained soil, of stories that hurt to tell. The land knows, remembers, and echoes. As the marker is erected, finally another story will be visible on the land again.
Today, you have come together in a powerful way to address the contaminants created by our history. This marker changes the landscape, but more importantly, it changes the identity of this community. You join a growing number of communities that are reckoning with difficult, with difficult histories. You are embracing the process of truth and justice, truth and reconciliation, and truth and repair. This is essential for us to recover from a history of racial injustices.
It is reported that from 1877 to 1950, there was approximately 4,400 lynchings in the country. It is noted that 186 lynchings took place in Kentucky. The East Kentucky Community Remembrance Project was formed in 2020 with the support of the Big Sandy chapter of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, for the purpose of reckoning with a local history of racial violence and advancing learning and action for racial justice.